Thank you so much for a fabulous session, Transforming Self and Well, Saraha. Now, you opened with a quote about liberation, which I thought was fabulous.
Yeah.
Could you tell us a bit about that to start with?
Yeah. So that was a quote from Leela Watson, who's an Aboriginal activist and scholar. And the quote was something like, "If you have come here to help me, you are wasting your time. If you've come here because your liberation is bound up with mine, then let us work together." And that quote is attributed to her, although she denies it because she says it arose naturally out of the organisation that she's part of.
I thought that was a fabulous kind of nugget to start with, because it really was the spirit of the workshop. One of the things you talked about was working with strong emotion, which got a really positive response.
Right,
Quite a lot of relief. People saying, "Well, it's great we're working with this, that we can embrace all of ourselves."
Yeah.
Why is that important to you personally?
Because it's okay to be angry. There's a lot going on in our world, and it's okay to be angry. It's okay to have rage. I think the one of the things I talked about today, which a few people seems to like, was how we mustn't tone police each other. How if somebody is very angry, if we're as a organisation open to feedback from people, we mustn't say we'll only listen to you if you're not angry. We mustn't say we'll only listen to you if you're emotionally literate and educated. If somebody is angry, that is part of what they need to communicate. And our job is to learn to receive that kindly, kind to ourselves, knowing our boundaries and our limitations, but also being able to hear where people are coming from. And if they're coming from a very painful place, not expecting them or requiring them to tone that down, not expecting them and requiring them to be able to talk very calmly and politely. So yeah, for me, and that's very important with being aware of our own anger and rage, our own internal rage at the life we find ourselves in. If we're going to live from our passions, if we're going to live from our inspirations, we have to be in touch with our passions. And sometimes they are unrefined and energetic and lead us to great places. We'll not transform our rage by ignoring it. We'll only transform our rage by working with it kindly and wisely and boldly.
And how do we do that? How do we work with it kindly and boldly? I guess these sort of workshops do help, don't they? The approach that you take.
Yeah, these workshops help. Doing the mindfulness breathing and the metta bhavana helps. Having good friends helps. Giving yourself time and patience, self-metta helps. But also, I think if we're angry about something, we need to find a way of having agency about that thing. We need to find a way of doing something. If we're angry about a particular type of injustice in the world, be that towards ourselves or a friend or a family member or even as strangers on the other side of the world, if we're not actually doing something about that, however small it may be, then our anger it can become septic somehow. So I think for me, one of the most important aspects of these workshops that I like to give is, helping people to know themselves and to know each other, which includes knowing and understanding what you're concerned about, being okay with anger and rage and a whole other emotions, for example, love and the concern to benefit the world. Behind anger there is always love, but also a sense of agency. I want people to go away from these workshops with a sense of agency and a sense that what they're doing with their life can make a difference to other people as well as to themselves.
Yeah, and you also talked about finding overlapping views or desires, and how much that helps as well.
Yes.
I think
yes.
that really does make you feel, well, for me it helps with agency.
Right, yes. Yeah, I think if we think of ourselves as isolated and having to solve these problems alone, we will not get very far. There's an old African saying, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together.
Oh, I like that.
But with the, I use the word overlapping, we need to look for overlapping visions. If you try and find people who have exactly the same vision as you do, you'll probably be very lonely. But if you find people who look for people who've got a sufficient overlap with your vision, then you'll find many, many people that you can work with.
Yeah, and I guess from the workshop I get reminded again really how important deep listening is. It really is key to finding the overlapping visions and to feeling agency. But and you set it up incredibly well. Like there was a real sense in the room about this deep listening. So I just want to ask you, I mean, how do you set that up? How does it? I come out of the workshop thinking, how did he do that? So how can you tell us a bit about your thinking around that?
How do you
Big question.
Big question. Big question. I think the world's changed in the last few years. I think we, in a lot of the cultures that I move in, are getting much better at listening to the voices of marginalised people. I think in the last few years, white people have got a lot better at listening to the experiences of people of colour, at listening to the subtleties of the experience of people of colour, the experiences of people of colour. And likewise with transgender issues, I think cis people have got a lot better at respecting and at listening and understanding to the experiences of different people. And I've certainly done a lot of work in this area in the last few years, and it's been a very, very beautiful journey of getting closer to myself and closer to other people. If we understand our own suffering, we can understand other people's suffering. If we can be in touch with our own rage, we can understand and respect and value what other people's rage has got to communicate to us and to the world. So I think, yeah, there isn't a magic answer of how to set up safe spaces or spaces where people feel comfortable to really bring themselves and be honest, except to practice and to really empathise with yourself and with other people. And there's a lot of good books around. You know, research, read widely, read carefully, discuss, keep going, make mistakes, apologise, keep going, become wonderful, etc.
Easy. Just giving people the permission to speak deeply, to speak about what matters. That's what always strikes me often about your workshop and other workshops we've had at Transforming Self and World. People really relish that. That really seems to make a difference.
Yeah, absolutely. I think people like talking about themselves and what concerns them. And yeah, I passionately believe that we mustn't leave politics at the door of the Buddhist Centre. We must bring our politics into the Buddhist Centre. We must bring what we care about into the Buddhist Centre and not be afraid of disagreeing with other people in the Buddhist Centre. We're meeting at the Buddhist Centre from a deeper place than our views and our opinions, but that doesn't mean without our views and opinions. We're meeting other human beings and we're meeting as human beings, connecting as human beings, and bringing the diversity of our views and opinions. It doesn't matter if we disagree, we'll both learn if we can keep contact with the humanity between us and engage from a deeper place. I think if we feel we need to leave our politics at the door, that's coming from a lack of trust that the Buddhist Centre is a genuinely radical, transformative, that the Dharma is a genuinely radical, transformative lifestyle.
The other thing you talked about was how you were inspired by Joanna Macy's The Work That Reconnects and the 3 different kinds of activists to resist, to renew and to change consciousness. Yeah, and it was quite it's interesting how you were saying, well, you don't have to do everything.
Yes.
So but which one are you which bit of which one do you think? And you were gravitating toward renew and changing consciousness.
Yeah.
So how has that had an impact on you?
I think all 3. So resist means standing in front of things. It means stopping the worst of the damage that's happening to our environment or to individuals or to societies, communities, ecosystems. It's really important that there are people who are doing that work of preventing the worst of the damage. That's not something that I've done. I've spent 25 years full-time attempting to build societies that are based on the Dharma economy, that are based on kindness, that are opposing capitalism, that are not buying into capitalist values, not relating to people in terms of what we can get from them, but relating to human beings. And the diversity of human beings, the diversity of mental health and neurology, and we all can work together and come together and create the world that we want to create. And of these three forms of change making, or these three forms of activism, yes, resist is a very important form, but renew means living the way that you want to live, living together with other people the way that you want to live, in a way that's sustainable, beautiful, and leading towards a society where everyone is welcome and everyone is able to live in the way they want to live, with honesty and integrity. And change of consciousness is, well, yes, the Buddhist centres, we teach hundreds, thousands of people mindfulness breathing and a metta bhavana. We have conversations, we listen to people. That's a very transformative thing. Giving people a space just to feel into what's going on for them and listen to themselves and speak carefully. This changes the consciousness of people one by one and of society, and it's very, very important work for the long term of our species.
Yeah, I think people came away with a sense that, you know, there is something within those three things that they can do, and feeling a bit more agency. So just thank you so much for. Is there anything else you want to say about the session?
No, not really. I was thinking when you asked about that quote. What was the quote?
The one about liberation.
Yes, your liberation is bound up with mine. What made me think of that in the days leading up to this workshop was the Transforming Self and World title. So we have this class called Transforming Self and World, and I think that's a very good title. You cannot transform self without transforming world. You cannot transform world without transforming self. Indeed, I'd say you can't separate self and world. We're beings that are embedded from before we were born in a society. We cannot not be part of society. We cannot not be part of the world. Our actions change the world changes our lives and our consciousnesses. So we can't change self without transforming world, and we can't transform world without transforming self.
Thanks very much.
Cool.